Ports, remasters, and a Switch game that does indeed have a lot of heart. RPGFan.com presents our most recommended titles from November of 2021. In isolation with its Super Famicom SNES counterparts, Final Fantasy V is a bit of an odd duck. Sandwiched between the character drama of Final Fantasy IV and the beautiful multifaceted epic of Final Fantasy VI, it's easy to see why Bart's adventures were overlooked at first glance. But comparing Final Fantasy V to its predecessor and sequel is a little bit unfair. One is many people's first RPG, and many's first favorite, and the other is widely regarded as one of the best RPGs ever. Final Fantasy V isn't interested in redemption arcs, nor is it interested in tales of rebellion. Instead, it's all about having a good old-fashioned adventure full of fun and warmth, and with some costume changes along the way. Final Fantasy V is often dismissed because of its lack of a grind, intricate story, or memorable characters, but it didn't have the smoothest ride on its way over to the West. From the poor load times of the anthology version, to the compressed sound of Advanced, to whatever the original mobile and Steam visuals were, there's never been a definitive version. Until now, at least. Final Fantasy V is a loving homage to the series. In particular, it looks back fondly at the NES trilogy and updates the mechanics, structure, story, and gameplay, all while retaining that traditional turn-based combat and wonderful music. Even the sometimes frustrating dungeons and bosses stick around for much-needed reminders of the good old days. Because of this, Final Fantasy V has a unique spirit among the other Super Famicom SNES titles. 6 does have some elements of customization, and 4 has its moments of silliness, but the core of 5 is to embrace the fun and experimentation and lose yourself in the adventure. The magical girl subgenre of media is a seemingly perfect fit for JRPGs. Vibrant transformations, flashy special attacks, cute mascots that may or may not be evil, coming-of-age tales, and a grand cast of characters battling against nefarious villains sounds right at home with the genre that already has these elements. In 2017, developer Gust announced Blue Reflection, a low-budget and experimental JRPG that was good but not great. Now, 4 years later, Gust followed up with Blue Reflection Second Light, and the result is simply magical. Along with its connection to the first game, Blue Reflection Second Light is a sequel to the 2021 anime Blue Reflection Ray. It follows a group of girls led by Ao Hoshizaki, a quiet and lonely otaku who spends her days reading manga and watching anime. For all her life, she wished she could be someone special or interesting like the girls in her favorite series. One fateful day, she gets a mysterious text message and finds herself waking up in a new world surrounded by amnesiac girls. Soon after, Ao discovers she and the other girls are reflectors, girls who fight demons to protect the emotion of others. They awake on a strange and lonely little island, robbed of their memories and their only shelter, an oddly familiar school. Their goal quickly becomes clear: recover their memories and find out the truth about the world outside. Blue Reflection Second Light is a beautiful game in every way. It looks fantastic, plays great, and sounds incredible. It's challenging, rewarding, and a unique experience through and through. It has a hopeful, positive message, and the story is a fun and winding ride. The presentation is top-notch, and the game itself demonstrates what Gust has learned in the past 4 years from their Atelier games. For those looking for a magical girl JRPG to play, consider checking out the entire series. For fans of the original game and anime, Blue Reflection Second Light is an easy recommendation. It is one of Gust's best games to date, and easily the best game in the magical girl media subgenre. Chaos and ruin lie at the road leading to Cyrodiil, where the much sought-after source of immortality awaits. Neighboring kingdoms wishing to control the source for themselves send their armies forward, only for their forces to be crushed by the mighty immortals who guard the source. One such shoulder is Soren, who finds himself bound by a contract to death following his untimely demise. Unable to properly die with the contract in place, Soren fights the powerful immortals and their hordes for death in order to reach the source and destroy it, thereby bringing balance back to the worlds of the living and dead. It is a task easier said than done, and Soren will find himself facing harsh truths throughout his battles. Death's Gambit is a 2D Souls-like action RPG with Metroidvania elements released in 2018. Death's Gambit Afterlife is essentially an expansion of the original game that nearly triples its size and includes a wealth of alterations to streamline the title further. Visually, Afterlife is a gorgeous, sprite-filled game that readily brings to mind the bleak, dark fantasy setting the title is trying to convey throughout its entirety. The attention to detail in each area's background, as well as the characters' and creatures' appearance, is terrific. Each portion of the map has a different gorgeous design aesthetic. Graphically, while overall having an understandably darker vibe, there's still a stark beauty to Death's Gambit Afterlife. The game can be rough at times, and frustrating in others, but there's something to be said for felling foes after a lengthy struggle and finding that winning strategy and managing to successfully implement it at long last. It didn't hurt that the game's story manages to be compellingly personal, with some touching moments and bursts of humor. Death's Gambit Afterlife is an easy recommendation to those who've already tried the initial game, just to see the extensive overhaul it received. The level of challenge here is extremely high, but the sense of accomplishment from playing the game and overcoming it is real. It wasn't until 4 years after its release that Konami seemed to realize Symphony of the Night had been a hit, so they revisited this 2D genre mashup on the Game Boy Advance. And frankly, they hit it out of the park, releasing a total of 3 Metroidvania titles for the GBA and 3 more for the Nintendo DS. However, aside from their Wii U Virtual Console re-releases, the GBA titles were never available outside of their original system, until now. In the Castlevania Advance Collection, we get Circle of the Moon, Harmony of Dissonance, and Aria of Sorrow in one jam-packed collection. To set the bar low, Castlevania Circle of the Moon is a Game Boy Advance launch title from 2001, and it looks every bit like one. To set the bar high, modern 2D Castlevania games are almost always excellent, and Circle of the Moon is a standout among those. Both of the above claims are true. Circle of the Moon is visually dated and has some annoying menus, but it's otherwise a hugely entertaining part of the Castlevania Advance Collection. Castlevania Harmony of Dissonance starts with 2 vampire hunters, Just Belmont and Maxime Kishin, on a quest to rescue their kidnapped friend Liddy from Dracula's castle. The story is a bit on the light side, but the tale of friendship is a good motivator for exploring and fighting. There are even 3 different endings to uncover depending on your actions throughout the game, adding replayability. Castlevania Aria of Sorrow turns Dracula's castle into a compelling playground, where players can experiment with a plethora of powers plucked from the onslaught of enemies they must endure. In addition to the weapon variety usually seen in Metroidvanias, which already provide players plenty of room for prioritizing personal playstyle preferences, protagonist Soma Cruz can absorb the souls of the enemies he defeats. These souls can be equipped at will, granting Soma unique powers. Though Castlevania Symphony of the Night was the first entry to truly embrace 2D exploration and non-linear progression, it was in these 3 GBA titles that the Vania was permanently affixed to the Metroid. Individually, they are fantastic games, and together they offer an irresistible package to fans of the series and genre. Lynette Muir is the top bridal advisor for Cupid Corporation, the premier matchmaking business in the city of Los York, when she's handed her biggest challenge yet, getting 5 clients who are so notoriously difficult they're known as the Parasite 5, ready for marriage. With the potential promotion on the line, she's prepared to give it her all, though she certainly isn't expecting some of the twists and turns her mission will take. Reality TV shows, sudden strip teases, and even a nefarious rival matchmaking companies all come into play. Not to mention that the world of myth might experience a resurgence, especially since Lynette is actually Cupid herself on a mission to prove to her overbearing and haughty father Mars that human matchmaking is more powerful than the gods imagine. Will Lynette succeed in her goal, earn that promotion, and maybe even find love for the first time in her life? That is entirely up to the player's decisions in Cupid Parasite, a zany romantic comedy visual novel. Cupid Parasite is a lengthy game with a decent sized common route and suitor-specific routes that tend to be just as long. Given that there are 5 suitors initially and a secret character route once you've completed the others, along with the various alternate outcomes that you can uncover, there is quite a lot of replayability to be had here. The sheer amount of energy in the story, combined with a likable cast of characters and well-written developing romances, makes this rom-com worth perusing if it happens to be your thing. If nothing else, Cupid Parasite certainly knows how to entertain its target audience. The word sacrifice has a negative connotation, and understandably so. No one ever wants to give up the security that comes with what they already have. But anything and everything new comes at a cost of something else. This is a concept Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc Anniversary Edition implements to ample success. Inevitably, some sacrifices are taken a bit too far, but the majority are worthwhile exchanges, resulting in a very solid foundation for a series that has since fittingly flourished. Danganronpa follows a group of high school students who have been locked inside Hope's Peak High School for an indefinite period of time. They're given two choices. Either they remain inside the school for the rest of their lives, or a single student can leave if they successfully commit murder and get away with it. As students succumb to the call of freedom, dead bodies are found, thus beginning an investigation to catch the perpetrator, lest they go free and leave the rest of the students to be executed in their stead. Investigations have the player, as Makoto, gather testimony from fellow students and search for clues across the school in the vein of point-and-click adventures. Heavily stylized 2D objects and characters on top of 3D background provide a striking visual flair in exchange for some hitbox hijinks. Ultimately, everything about Danganronpa is highly elevated. The story's stakes, the characters' tropes, and even the unique factors of its gameplay. While these sometimes won't stick their landing, such as some rather exaggerated character stereotypes, the game's foundation itself is still very strong. It's no surprise that Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc Anniversary Edition is joined by 4 other titles, because the sacrifices made for this first entry in the series paved the way for improvements down the line, while remaining an unforgettable experience in its own right. While the first Danganronpa was certainly a standout title, it wrapped up fairly neatly, and it wasn't necessarily clear the title would benefit from sequels. Not long after, however, Danganronpa 2 Goodbye Despair was released, and proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that this franchise had more to offer. While Danganronpa 2 does hit many familiar beats as its predecessor in terms of setup and gameplay, it does so well that it supplements a lack of novelty with once again drawing the player into an enthralling and suspenseful world, full of quirky characters and intense mysteries both big and small. This Anniversary Decadence release, alongside the other games, will hopefully introduce this visual novel mainstay to a new generation of fans. Not even a few minutes in, and the classmates of Hope's Peak Academy are revealed to have been transported to the tropical Jabberwock Island, and are introduced to a rabbit mascot who seems to be facilitating what should be a fun trip. Though this is jarring for the group, things get worse as the sadistic two-tone bear who ran Danganronpa's killing game takes over the island and redefines the itinerary. As in the first game, the students are trapped, and in order to escape they must kill one of the other students and get away with it during a class trial. Though the anniversary release for Danganronpa 2 does not add a lot for your longtime fans, the core game remains a solid sequel to the original, and if you enjoyed the first one in any capacity, you should definitely check out this second. It continues a tradition of strong and creative character designs, music, voice acting, and deduction gameplay alongside a twisting and suspenseful story with quirky humor and high stakes. There are some small cracks in the gameplay where a slight bit of tedium can sneak in, but these moments are vastly outweighed by the game's overall quality. Much like the first game, you will likely remember some of the characters and plot twists in this game long after playing it, and likely be humming the music as well. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic initially released in 2003. Now, almost 20 years later, the classic sci-fi RPG has made its way to the Nintendo Switch. Is the Force still strong with this port, or has that sensitivity vanished with the passage of time? Knights of the Old Republic is a Star Wars story at its very heart, with all the aesthetic trappings of the franchise that might be appealing to some, but off-putting to others. Those who don't at least have a little bit of love for the series would probably do best to look elsewhere for their RPG experience, though fans will certainly find enjoyment in getting their Jedi training on. The game captures the feel of the film beautifully in its planetary vistas, thrilling space battles, and hectic lightsaber duels. The music is grand and epic in scope, and brings to mind the soundtracks of the various Star Wars films wonderfully. 3D graphics in general tend to show their age much more readily than 2D ones, and that is certainly the case here. On the plus side, it means the game can be played without taxing the Switch too much. Overall, despite its age, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic is still an incredibly solid game, and easily one of the best ports to be played on the Switch. The Force is still quite strong with this one, and it gives Switch owners something to bide their time while we wait for more news about Aspire's remake. Super Robot Wars 30 is the latest installment in the venerable crossover Super Robot Wars strategy RPG series that has enjoyed 30 years of immense popularity. Let's face it, who wouldn't want to play a game where you get to recruit various giant robots from anime like Mobile Suit Victory Gundam, Majestic Prince, and many more for an epic multiverse crossover. Any Super Robot Wars aficionado will tell you that there is a certain magic to the series that can only be understood through playing a mainline installment. Unfortunately, prior mainline installments were Japan only, and the only Super Robot Wars games to make it to the US were just a few spin-offs. That didn't stop importers though, as Super Robot Wars has been immensely popular among that demographic for decades. Super Robot Wars 30 is the first mainline installment to make it to the US, and it's that big a deal. Although a lot of anime and even prior Super Robot Wars games are referenced throughout the narrative, a neophyte can still get into it provided they're into giant robots and willing to invest in reading the in-game lore in the menus. There is no denying that Super Robot Wars 30 is a fine looking game. The animated CG anime blend cutscenes look sharp, the visual novel style story scenes between battles look smooth, and the flashy battle animations look spectacular. The battle animations can be fast forwarded or turned off to speed up play progression, but are totally worth watching every so often just to see various mechs fighting in all their metallic glory. The 2D battlefield scenes look like a high definition version of a 16-bit RPG, which gets the job done, but doesn't impress the way other graphics do. The battlefields are large, and the chibi sprites aren't as detailed or flashy as other graphics. That being said, the visuals and camera panning enable unencumbered views of the battlefield, which is always a plus when maneuvering troops. Super Robot Wars 30 has been casting a spell on fans for the past 30 years, and there's no reason to believe it won't be for another 30 more to come. With the 5th installment of the cult classic series Shin Megami Tensei here after a lengthy development, Atlus has a lot to prove. But prove it they shall, because Shin Megami Tensei 5 is a truly transformative experience. With the popularity of the related Persona series and the recent release of Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, the series is finally poised to seize the limelight. The battle system is fundamentally unchanged from the last few titles. Shin Megami Tensei 5 still uses the press turn system introduced in Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, and to great effect. You get extra turns for targeting enemy weaknesses or getting critical hits, but so do your enemies. Turns are also lost for hitting resistance or missing attacks. Buffs and debuffs matter and can easily make or break a given boss battle. One new addition is the Magatsui gauge, which, when full, allows access to potent skills that don't cost a turn to use. You can unlock various ways to fill the gauge faster, and eventually you'll be using these skills several times in a single boss battle. The most significant changes in interacting with the battle system come from the many ways you can customize your party. SMT5 has, without a doubt, the most freedom in series history when crafting your pack of demons. Classic fusion is still a vital part of the game, and Sophia, the demon who handles all your summoning and fusion needs, is happy to make it as simple as possible. While you can still toss two demons together and see what you get, you can also look at every demon available to fuse from your current stock, or even every fusion possible, including summoning demons you have registered in your compendium. Overall, Shin Megami Tensei 5 is the smoothest to play the series has ever been, making it a premier JRPG that just can't be missed. Don't let worries over difficulty, legacy, or even performance stop you from playing one of the best games of this generation. To read the full review of these games and more, head on over to RPGFan.com.